It's the sound of young America. I'm Jesse Thorn. My guest is the singer Kenna. Kenna, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Hi.
His second LP is called Make Sure They See My Face. His first New Sacred Cow came out, what, about 5 years ago now?
Came out 4 years ago, 2003.
Originally born in Addis Ababa, grew up in Virginia, in Cincinnati.
Yep.
He makes music that kind of stubbornly defies categorization, combining some kind of club and hip-hop sounds with kind of dramatic 80s new wave synth pop sounds.
I am stubborn.
Yeah, featured in the Malcolm Gladwell book Blink, which is your official passport to National Public Radio, by the way.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, anything Malcolm Gladwell, all you got to do is just have one photograph of yourself and Malcolm Gladwell. It's sort of like, you know how in the olden days, when you would go to a new kingdom, you would bring an introduction letter to the king.
Oh, he's my permanent recommendation letter.
Exactly.
I love that. Thank you, Malcolm.
How old were you? None of your bios ran down kind of your pre-18 history. Other than that, grew up in Virginia and Cincinnati and born in Addis Ababa.
Right.
How old were you when you came to the United States?
I was only 3.5 when I got here.
To
Cincinnati, for that matter.
Do you remember living outside the United States?
I have some small memories. I was young. But I remember a little bit of it, and I still speak the language, but that's probably because my house, when I was younger, my house was Ethiopia, and then outside of my house was the rest of the world or America, So I was always reminded of the things that I had in Ethiopia.
Were there Ethiopian American communities in Cincinnati and in Virginia?
Oh yeah. There are a lot of Ethiopians everywhere. You kind of, if you're Ethiopian, you recognize them right away. And if you look closely, you can find them pretty much everywhere. Cincinnati was, anywhere there's a university, you'll find a crew of Ethiopians because most Ethiopians are in absolute pursuit of education.
Was that a priority for your folks?
Yeah, my dad and my mom both are college educated. My dad went to Cambridge and has his PhD from University of Cincinnati, which is where he went. And then my mom as well has her business degree, and she actually was administrator for University of Cincinnati with Jerry Springer.
Wait, she was an administrator specifically for Jerry Springer?
No, she and Jerry Springer, my mom and Jerry
because
Springer,
he was mayor of Cincinnati, wasn't he?
He was an English teacher at a high school first, and then he was at university. It was an Institute of Policy Research. He and my mom and a team of people created the Cincinnati Poll, and then he went on to be mayor. And then he went to Smutville, USA.
Did your folks have expectations of you in that regard? Like, did they expect you to go to Cambridge and get a PhD?
Oh, I mean, they would have loved that. I think for the most part, my deviation from the schooling path was a sore on my dad's side specifically. But I think now they kind of realize that it was necessary.
When you were like an adolescent, like when you were like 13 to 18, what did you think about that whole thing? Like, were
education?
Yeah.
You know what? I think I was always a little bit bored, mainly because I felt like I knew a lot of the information because my parents had always raised me to be ahead, and I started school early, and so I was pretty much focused on education from childhood on, and I think I reached the point where I wanted to branch out and do something creative, and I didn't know what that was, and so I was one of those people who twiddled in class and doodled on the desks and did a bunch of other things like that. But I ended up loving books, and I read a great deal when I was younger, and then when I hit like 13 is when I started realizing what music was.
How did you start realizing what music was?
Well, I mean, around that age, I was skating a great deal, and I was in Virginia at the time, and I was skateboarding, and That was the big thing. We had the ramp in Virginia Beach at Mount Trashmore, and we built our own ramps at home. And I'd gotten to be kind of an entrepreneur. I had paper routes and T-shirt companies and just weird things I created.
What kind of T-shirts were you selling?
I sold a line called Nervous People. I made my own logo, and I put it on shirts, and I screen printed it, and then I'd sell them to kids at school. And I would sell gum. Like, I was this kid who just really wanted to, like, I saw my parents hustling and making money and working very hard, and I always thought that, you know, the easiest way to have what you want was to work for it. So
I think we all agree that the road to riches are paved with T-shirts,
and bubble gum.
Yeah,
and that's what I ended up doing. And funny enough, I heard about this group called U2 that was coming to town, and everyone was freaking out.
When was this?
This is Joshua Tree time. It's like 13, 14. And I heard about that, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to stand in line, and I'm going to buy 4 U2 tickets, which is the limit for any one person to buy. I'm going to buy 4 U2 tickets, and I'm going to wait. I didn't know what scalping was at the time, but I did it. I went and sat in line, got there way early. People were camped out, bought 4 tickets.
That's a lot of capital for a 13, 14-year-old kid.
Paper route money saved, all that stuff I invested. It was an investment to buy these tickets. And then I turned around and I sold them for $400 a piece.
$400 a piece?
$400 a piece.
Wow.
It was a big deal. And I made a lot of money, and I was a rich kid at the time. And my friend across the street, Chris, comes over and he's talking to me, and I'm like, yeah, I made $400 for each ticket. You know, I made $1,600. I'm so cool. And he says, you sold Joshua Tree tickets? Are you crazy? And the way he looked at me and the way that he spoke to me, it was like I killed his dog or something. It was unbelievable. And he runs back to his house, comes back over, hands me a cassette of Joshua Tree. He says, go in your room, turn off the lights, and listen to this, and realize what you just did.
What kind of music were you listening to? Like, what kind of music did you listen to when you were like 10, 11, 12?
I really didn't. I was kind of trapped in Ethiopia. My house was Ethiopian. My parents wanted me to study. I may have watched television a little bit, but it was like McNeil Lehrer NewsHour and NPR.
I'm glad to know that somebody else watched the NewsHour as a kid.
I mean, it was that, and it was shortwave, BBC shortwave radio, and it was a lot of that stuff. So I didn't really get a chance to focus on music when I was younger. It was Michael Jackson. Maybe we fell in love with Michael Jackson like everybody else did, but Joshua Tree was when everything opened up.
What was it? What was it like that that first time that you listened to that album?
I felt like when I turned on the record and listened to the very intro of the album, I felt like I was on a journey. And I felt like that I was no longer in my house. I was no longer in Cincinnati. I was no longer on the planet, for that matter. I was somewhere else, and I was seeing everything that Bono was seeing. And I didn't know what that was, but I just felt it. And I didn't necessarily have a storyline to my own vision, but it was definitely an experience that I felt was kind of like a euphonious ride, you know? And from that point on, I was bitten, hooked.
What did you do when you were bitten?
Well, I mean, first I obsessed and I destroyed the tape and I played it too much, and then I ended up, wanting to know if there's more music like that. Was there more things I've missed, and it was Depeche Mode, and it was R.E.M. It was, Smashing Pumpkins, and it was Talking Heads, The Cars, early Genesis, Hendrix. I really didn't even get into the Beatles then. I'd heard Beatles, obviously everybody had, but I hadn't really gotten into it. And then I ended up listening a little more to the Beatles then, and more later on in my music career, as I was creating albums, did I listen to the Beatles full on. But it triggered a great deal of musical interest in me.
I've heard you talk about that album, The Joshua Tree, before. Does it still have that kind of resonance for you? Is it resonant in a different way now that you're an adult instead of a 13-year-old kid?
No, it has the same. The thing about that record is that it's timeless in a way where you can go through that journey, and as you get older, you understand what that journey is. And that album, you can pretty much apply most of the songs on the album to any and every time period of your life. And that's what I strive to do when I'm making my records now, is I want to be able to have an album that when you put it on, it's not stuck in any one decade. You know, it's something you can listen to 20 years from now, and it will apply to your life then. And you can grow with it and see what it is you're a part of around what's happening around you, and apply the music to that. So that's what it does for me whenever I hear it now. I mean, I listen to it pretty constantly.
You're listening to The Sound of Young America from MaximumFun.org. I'm Jesse Thorn. My guest is Kenna. His new album is Make Sure They See My Face. One of the things about you two that I hear in your music is that I think it would be harder to find a rock group with a sound that's more big and expansive and kind of embraces, size and majesty more than you two. And it seems like your record is similar in that way, in that you really don't shy away from going 10 out of 10 on emotion and just kind of size. But as I was hearing that parallel...
It's all ego, by the way. It's all ego. I want to be in a stadium, and I pretend like I'm there when I'm making my music.
I wondered, what I found myself wondering was less like, how did this connection come about, as much as, did you go through a period in your life where you weren't comfortable making that kind of music, and you went the other direction and were too cool for school, or close to the vest, or making music that was much smaller?
I've never made music that I didn't make music to make music small. Let me rephrase that by saying I've never seen music as something small. And I've never seen music as something specific to one individual or one world or one genre or one idea. I make music so that it can be seen and heard by the masses, and I think that's maybe part of it's maybe part of the reason why I'm so I guess I'm losing how I want to answer this question. You know what I think it is that I make music as big as I do, and hope that it's cinematic and dramatic, so that people understand that there's real depth to it, and there's real heartfelt emotion to what it is that I'm creating. And it's not just, I'm doing this for myself in my living room with a beat maker, and a mic. I'm really trying to do something that will impact and speak from one spirit to another.
Your albums have been co-produced by Chad Hugo, who's best known as half of the Neptunes, who are probably the biggest hit-making producers of the past, I guess, almost 15 years now, 10 or 15 years.
Sure, yeah.
You went to high school with him? You guys were friends in high school?
Yeah, I went to high school with Chad. Pharrell went to a rival school, but we all knew each other. And but Chad went to my high school, and we were friends in high school. But what's really great about my relationship with Chad is what happened after high school, because we went to college together, and we were at Old Dominion University, and we would run into each other in the hallways between classes. And it's a gigantic school, so for us to be running into each other in the hallway is kind of random. And we would constantly have these conversations about music, and what we were excited about and what we wanted to make. And I was on my own journey. He was on his own journey. But when it all made sense that I wanted to make something brand new, Chad was the only person I could think of.
What was it? What was it like for you when? I mean, I personally remember when I first heard the Nori song "What" on the radio, which was one of the first big breakthrough hits that the Neptunes produced, and the sound was so outrageous compared to anything else that was on the radio. Nori was also pretty outrageous.
Yeah.
I think that's the record where he has that lyric that goes like, run laps around the English Channel, Neptunes, I got a Cocker Spaniel. So the whole thing was pretty big and ridiculous, but what was it like for you that this was like some guys that you knew that were behind this thing that was like the most, not only a huge record, but also like the most pop of pop records, like this, and also this kind of like really outrageous sound. And what was that like for you as an outsider to that / semi-insider?
You know, I mean, I think we were always family in a lot of ways. I mean, the thing is, what people don't realize is that the Neptunes, I wasn't surprised, and I was right there with them and excited for what they were doing because I knew what they were capable of. I'd heard the Neptunes as a band when the Neptunes was a band at one point. The new form of that is NERD, but I knew them as a band, and I heard all the music they were doing and producing. And Pharrell, I mean, what people don't really know is that What record wasn't the first thing that they'd done. You know, it was Use Your Heart, SWV. Before that, it was Pharrell wrote the All I Want to Do Is Zoom a Zoom.
Yeah, I was going to say, didn't he write for Teddy Riley and stuff?
Yeah, so I mean, and that was outrageous. And just his rhyme for Teddy at the time. This is Teddy, ready with the 1-2 check. Rex and effects is an effects, but on the record of the tracks of the. I mean, that whole timing, the way he was doing it, he was so far ahead, and he was what, 16 at the time. So I think that I didn't expect anything but for them to do that, and I knew Chad, and I knew what Chad was capable of and what they were sonically thinking of, and we were all being trained by one of the best producers in the entire world at the time, being Teddy Riley. So we were lucky. He was a big fish in a small pond, and we were little fish trying to get big.
Well, let me ask you this question. I think it's if somebody reads a review of your record, the kind of hip-hop urban music influence on it is played up, and I think it would be very easy to overstate that. Your records are pretty far from Teddy Riley or from. So how did you fit into that, and how did you decide? Well, I'm going to stick with this. Grandiose synth pop thing.
Yeah, I think what it was is I'm not capable of writing booty records. I'm just not the guy who has like, I'm not able to, I'm not a flossing dude. I don't rock any kind of jewelry. I'm not a jewelry dude either. Like, the thing is, I'm not against it. I have all my friends are like that, so it's all good. But just me as a person, I'm not that person. And my general demeanor is of somebody who's always contemplating. I'm way introspective, and to a degree, it's annoyingly introspective, and to some degree, it's probably pretty self-consumed. And I feel like the music I make has to have that kind of personality to it, and it has to have that kind of explosive cinematic quality to it, because everything that I'm dealing with internally is so gigantic. In my head, it's just massive issues and massive problems. They're probably not that big, but the music has to represent what it is I'm internally dealing with. And I've never been able to see hip hop and R&B exceeding that. So the only world that I felt like could understand me was, the alternative world or the rock world. And That's what I aspire to. But I love the movement that's in hip hop, and I love the bang, and I love the beat, and I love how it makes people feel. So I wanted to incorporate that too.
Where were you at? Where were you at culturally when you were like 18? Like, were you? Was it still like skater kids that you were hanging out with, and what were your like peers interested in musically?
You know, that's the most interesting thing about my life is that I've never really had a set crew. I never rolled just with skaters. I never rolled just with, you know, nerds in school, like all the smart kids. I never rolled with just like the sports kids who played soccer and basketball. I pretty much rolled with everyone. And I kind of feel like that's what's happening in the world right now, is that people are really not specific to there aren't any cliques anymore. There might be, but they're kind of frowned upon because it's dumb, you know? And I represent a lot of worlds in one person. I'm the foreign kid. I'm the kid who lived in the inner city in Cincinnati. I'm the kid who lived in the suburbs in Virginia. You know, I'm the kid who loves rock records, but has lived in the hip hop land and R&B world. I pretty much am a big juxtaposition, and I live perpendicular to everything that's around me. And I think that's the best thing in the world, and I think that's what is happening now. And I feel like that's what the future is. So I didn't really have a crew of people that I was running with at the time. I just was, you know, bouncing from crew to crew, and friends were friends, and I didn't really think of it like...
In some way, finding a way to reconcile those big juxtapositions for the sake of, you know, the marketplace has been the big challenge of your career.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, that's not to say that you haven't been a success thus far. I mean, your first record has sold 250,000 records, which is a lot more than most records sell. But it's also not 4 million records. I think it has. That's what the internet told me. 260 or something.
That's amazing.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, that's a lot of people. 260,000 people.
Wow, I didn't even know that it did. That's crazy. I got to go and check my royalty statements.
I may have just made that up, but I think that's right.
No, it could be possible. I mean, look, the real point of it on the last record, New Sacred Cow, when they did peer-to-peer studies, is that
what's a peer-to-peer study?
Download sharing, people sharing with each other because they love each other.
Studies of your Napsters and whatnot.
Yeah, those people. The Napster people.
I would never do that.
Neither would I.
I don't even know what peer-to-peer is.
Yeah. See, you didn't even. Yeah, it's like you and I. You didn't even know right now when I was talking to you about it.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Nobody does. Nobody knows about it. It's a big secret.
I buy all my music at Sam Goody.
Okay. Yeah. See, after studying that secret, by the way, we found out that the record had been singles and/or the whole thing had been downloaded like 6 million times. 6 million plus times. And that was the best thing ever to hear, because I knew that meant that people were sharing the music. One way or the other, that's more important to me than anything.
I watched an interview that you did with Malcolm Gladwell, who we alluded to your relationship with him before. And in that interview, you said that this... Wait a
second, before you keep going with that question. But I'm not saying steal my music.
Okay.
I'm just saying... I'm cool if you hear something you love because your friend plays it for you, and then you go buy the record because you think it's cool enough to buy. I'm not cool with people getting a record, having the record, pretending like they bought the record, and then sharing it again with someone else after they have had it on their desk for a while. That's not cool, because at the end of the day, we all work really hard to make this stuff. And you know, it's not that for me, it's not about flossing and having a fat car. It's about being able to go on tour and see my fans. And if I can't sell records, then it actually hinders me from being able to reach those people.
Okay, well, let's talk about the new record. You described it as like a chronicle, just as you were describing earlier the Joshua Tree as being like a journey. You described Make Sure They See My Face as like a chronicle of the time between the release of that first record and the completion of the album.
Right.
What do you mean by that?
Well, just like Joshua Tree or any U2 record, I was attempting to make a journey for everyone. On this album, it starts with Daylight and it ends with Wide Awake. And Make Sure They See My Face it's kind of taking the piss because the last record I wasn't in any of my videos and people didn't know what I looked like, and there was only one approved photograph of me, and so this time around it was a real question for me to figure out what it is and who it is I wanted to present to the world, because I do fit in all these worlds. I'm the Ethiopian kid, I'm the inner city kid, I'm the suburban kid, I'm the rock kid, the hip hop kid. So I spent a great deal of time just trying to find a way to present myself. Like, who do I believe I am, being that I'm juxtaposed and that the world has a box that you have to fit into. And that journey trying to figure that out became the journey of the album.
Can you give me an example of a song on the record that specifically reflected some point on that journey?
Yeah, there was a time. Well, to start the album, I went and climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, and I thought that I'd be going. I felt that my life, I hadn't reached the top of my life's mountain, so I decided to climb an actual mountain. And that song is represented by Daylight, because Daylight, the first song on the record, is my want to leave all the issues that I've had behind me and get rid of blame and get rid of darkness and the weirdness that happened with New Sacred Cow. Anything that was dramatic about that, I wanted to put it aside. And I went up to the top of this mountain, and then I got sick, and then I had to come back down, only to find out that I took anti-altitude medicine that I was allergic to. Yeah. Yes, I did that. Okay, so I did that, and it was like I was at 18,200 feet, so I was just this far away from the top of the mountain, and so Daylight turned into Out of Control, because after figuring out that I didn't get to the top because of my own mistake, because of not knowing my own self, which is what Make Sure They See My Face became about. Everything was chaotic after that, and all that pressure to make a record was building up, and there was a chance it was going to explode. And I can't promise how, when, or where, but I can tell you it'll happen for sure. It was literally that feeling, and I didn't want to care anymore. I didn't want to be frustrated. I wanted to be sedated. I just wanted everything to kind of like go away, because I didn't know how I was going to do this. And every song on the record has a sentiment of the journey of making the record, from that to Out of Control to Being a Loose Wire, and trying to figure out all the hits that I've been missing, to Say Goodbye to Love, figuring out that I have to say goodbye to my history and start fresh again, to say Sun Red Sky Blue, and Static, not knowing if I want people to understand who I am, to, having to wise up or else I'd make my bed and live in it, finally to Being Still, and inevitably being wide awake and understanding the entire journey I'd just been on. So every song has a meaning.
Well,
that was a bigger answer than the question you asked me, but I have a problem. I end up being really, is it laconic? The word's laconic, right? When you're talkative.
Maybe. I couldn't define laconic for you right now.
Well,
you're the one who's
look it up, everybody. Laconic is a very powerful word, and I expect everyone to hand me a quarter when they see me.
Okay, good. That's a good use of public radio. Make people look up a word and then hand you a quarter. In fact, I think that could be pretty much the MO of public radio. Make people look up a word, make them hand you a quarter.
Well, you can hand the public radio station local to you a quarter instead.
Well, Kenna, thank you so much for being on The Sound of Young America. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Kenna's brand new record is called Make Sure They See My Face.
Make Sure They See My Face.
Do you have a solid release date now?
October 16th.
And it's released October 16th. There's another Sound of Young America for you. I've been your host, Jesse Thorn, America's radio sweetheart. The show's produced by Speaking Into Microphones. Our theme music, written and performed by Dan Grayson with help from myself. The music underneath me right now, provided by Dan Wally. I hope you'll visit us online at MaximumFun.org, where you will find our daily updated blog and our lively discussion forums. Feel free to download and share this video, which is downloadable for free from Google Video, embeddable from Google Video, or downloadable via torrent from MySpleen. If you need a MySpleen invitation, just send me an email. Or if you have thoughts about the show, do the same. Jesse at MaximumFun.org.